Welcome. Let's begin with a very important topic in geography, and that talks about movement of ocean waters. Now this forms a very fundamental understanding of the whole of oceanography. All these topics have been covered separately in detail, so you can refer the separate videos which would be available in the links below. Now let's understand the movement of water. Movement of water takes place in two fashion. So movement of water can be horizontal movement or vertical movement. When I say vertical movement, it's simply the upwelling and the sinking that takes place, and this is by tides. So vertical movement, we can say there are tides. Horizontal movements are the currents and the waves. So current means you have the water that moves. So whenever we say current, there is movement of water. When we say wave, there is no movement of water that takes place. That's the major difference between a current and a wave. Now, understanding the components of the wave, we have, let's say, a wave here. Now, this wave pattern has a crest and a trough. The difference between the crest and the trough is known as the wave height. Half of this height is what is known as amplitude. So we understand what is height, wave height. We understand what is wave amplitude. The difference between the two crest or two trough, whatever you can consider, is what is known as a wavelength. The time taken to move from one crest to another crest is what is known as a wave period. And let's say on this crest itself, consider this as the crest. On this crest, in 1 second, how many waves can pass? And that is the wave frequency. So another important term is the wave frequency. Whenever we talk about the movement, there is energy that is stored in the waves, and this energy is basically dissipated as it moves towards the coastal area. So as it approaches the beach, what happens is there is resistance or friction, because of which the waves finally slows down and decays. And that's how we understand the wave movement. These wave movements are circular in fashion. So there are two forces that act. One force is that pushes the waves downward, and definitely the force which is pushing the wave downward is what? It is gravity. On the other hand, you have the wave that goes up. Now why the wave goes up? Going down is very simple, that's due to the effect of gravity. When the wave is on the other side going up, why does it happen? It happens because you have the falling water which exerts the pressure. And because of this falling water that exerts the pressure, you have the upward movement that takes place. And that's very, very important to understand. So this is how you have the wave pattern that takes place, and the wave motion is always circular. So every wave that moves is circular in fashion. So here are the components of waves that we discussed right now. So all of those are again mentioned here just for your recap. The next important topic is tide. As we said, we have a complete lecture on tide separately. To understand this in a very simple fashion, I can say this is Earth, this is Moon. The gravitational pull of the Moon causes the tide. Now definitely this gravitational pull would be towards the side where you have the Moon, or the side facing the Moon. So you would have the gravitational pull that would be seen here. But to maintain a balance, what would happen is, opposite to the gravitational pull, there would be another force that would be there, and this is the centrifugal force. So centrifugal force and gravitational force are balanced, and because of these two, you have these 2 points where you have the high tides. In contrast to it, you have the other bulges on the other side perpendicular to those where you would have the low tides that are seen. So every day in a period of 24 hours, you have 2 high tide and 2 low tides that are witnessed. And this is what is known as the semi-diurnal tides. If you have just one tide and one high tide and one low tide, we say it's a diurnal tide. So you have the semi-diurnal tide that is explained. The tide generating forces we have already talked about. Now, sometimes there is a sudden rise in the tide, and this sudden rise is known as a tidal surge. This surge can occur due to numerous meteorological factors that affect the rise of the water levels. Again, if there is a open ocean, the tides would be comparatively less in contrast to a closed area where you have, let's say, a funnel shaped bay where the magnitude would be much higher. So this again varies based on the shape of the bay that is there, the estuary that is there, the intensification, the work that takes place is dependent on it. Again, when you have a tidal current that is seen, this tidal current is a kind of channelization that is seen between islands or bays, which leads to higher tidal frequencies or higher tidal levels that are seen. Some of the highest tides of the world are seen in Bay of Fundy in Canada. So those was a kind of general idea about tides. Coming on to the types of tide, we can classify tides based on different aspects. So you have, based on the frequency, you have a semi-diurnal, as we talked about, 2 high tides, 2 low tides. You have diurnal, 1 high tide, 1 low tide. And then there are mixed tides, which are variations in the height. Based on the sun, moon and earth, the positions, if all of those are in a straight line, we say it is a spring tide. Very important, spring is linear, and that's how you can remember. It's not at 90 degrees, okay? So when you have the sun, moon and earth in a single line, we say it is a spring tide. Easiest way to remember it. Occurs twice a month on a full day and a full moon and a new moon. The next is a neap tide. Neap tide occurs after 7 days of interval between a spring tide. So those are comparatively less bigger, less steeper, and here the position is right angle. So sun, moon and earth are at right angle, and this is what is a neap tide. Then you have perigee and apogee, or what we call as perihelion and epihelion. Perihelion is a point where Earth is closest to the sun. Unusually high and unusually low tides are seen during that time, usually near the 3rd of January that is seen. Again, when the perigee moon is closest to the earth, you have unusual tidal ranges that are seen. On the other hand, you have apogee, which is the farthest position, usually nearing the 4th of July, and here the difference is much more less as compared to perihelion or perigee. Two important terms to remember, you have ebb and flood. Now what is a difference between ebb, flood, or flood is also known as flow. Okay, ebb means when you have the duration between a high tide and a low tide, but the water level is falling. So that's how you remember it. When the water level falls, we call it as ebb. Between low tide to high tide, when the water level keeps on rising, we call it as a flood or a flow. So rise, now fall comes here, but FL, flood goes there. So that's how you have to remember. It's a kind of crisscross version. So falling is not related to flood or flow, it's related to ebb. So you have the falling pattern seen in ebb and the rising pattern seen in a flood, or other ways you can remember, flood is the rising water. So flood or flow is the rising levels that are seen. These tides are indeed very important because they help the navigators, they help the sailors, they help the fishermen to move across. Again, when the boat have to enter the harbor, that is determined by the tides, the kind of sedimentation flowing in, the desiltation that needs to be done, everything is governed by the tidal flow. Because of the tidal flow, you have tidal energy that is being generated. A major project has been going on closer to Sundarbans in India. So that is what is known as the Durga Dhuani project. So those are some examples of the tidal implications. The next major topic that we would understand today is the currents. Now when we say ocean currents, there are two forces that affect it. One is a primary force, the other is a secondary force. Secondary force simply influences the flow. So how does the things flow is influenced by the secondary flow. When I talk about primary flow, there are three things that we take into account. First is heating because of the solar energy. The second is the gravity, and the third is the Coriolis force. Now, how do we understand this? Let's first say heating. Now, heating causes expansion of the water. Definitely, this expansion is more where? It would be more closer to the equator. So, equator, you would have more expansion that would be seen as compared to the polar areas. Therefore, the height of the water at the equator is 8 centimeters more than the poles. And because of this slope, you would have the movement towards the pole that takes place, as simple as that. Then you have the gravity, which is basically the pull to pile up the water and create a gradient variation that could be seen, and Coriolis effect, that is the deflection towards the right in the north hemisphere and left in the south hemisphere, which we have covered in a very separate class to understand that. Again, the currents are strongest at the surface where you have the interaction with the air that takes place, and this strength governs the speed of the current. So more the strength of the current, you would have higher the speed that would be witnessed. Higher the speed, the stronger the current, and this strongest current therefore is seen towards the surface. As you go deeper into the ocean, the current speed would decrease and the intensity would again decrease. So vertical gradient, I can say difference in the density affects the current flow, and that's very, very important. Now warm waters always travel from equator towards the pole, and at the pole they replace the sinking water. From the poles you have the cold dense water that sinks in the bottom layers and comes towards the equator where it rises. So this movement is what is known as a thermohaline circulation that is generated into the oceans. Now based on the types of the ocean currents, I can say there can be surface current which are only 10%, and there can be deep water currents which are 90%. Most of the ocean waters, based on the gravity and the density, you have the deep water currents that are seen. Based on the temperature, there can be cold current and warm current. Cold current is a current that moves from a cold area to a warm area. Usually in the mid latitudes closer to the equator, it is on the western sides. However, in the northern hemisphere, it is higher. In the higher latitudes, it is towards the western side. Vice versa for the warm currents. So warm currents originate from the equator or the warm areas and move towards the colder areas. They are seen on the eastern side in the low latitudes, in contrast to what we have seen for the cold currents, and on the western sides in the higher latitudes in north hemisphere, and vice versa in the south hemisphere. Now these currents, as we said, are highly influenced by the wind and the Coriolis force that's there. So ocean circulation is in very good correspondence to the air circulation above it. So the surface water movement is very, very important to understand this. Now air circulation over the oceans in the mid-oceanic ridge or the middle latitudes, we can say, is anticyclonic, and this is anticyclonic movement is very, very similar to the ocean circulation. So both the air circulation and the ocean circulation in the mid latitudes become anticyclonic, and this is very, very important because you have transportation of heat that takes place from one latitude to another. So with each latitude you would have the transfer of the heat that would take place, and this creates gyres. So we have the eastern boundaries and the western boundaries where you have the movement that takes place. So warm current usually flow parallel to the east coast, mainly in the tropical areas, mainly in the subtropical areas, and this warm current leads to a warm and rainy climate, usually on the western margins of the subtropical anticyclonic regions we see. And wherever you have a mixing of a warm current and a cold current, you would have the most fertile fishing grounds that could be seen. Very high growth of plankton is seen, and because you have numerous planktons, you have numerous fishes in those areas, and those are the major fishing sites across the globe. So this map would help you understand how you have the ocean currents, the warm currents and the cold currents that flow across the globe. This was a very fundamental topic in understanding the basics of oceanography. We'll be covering many topics under NCERT, so stay tuned. Have a wonderful day ahead.